Lord, do remember me. Look away beyond the blue. Take it, John. I meant for you to sing.
Well, I just picked it. I'm going to sing. Well, I read about it in the book of Revelation. You read it too. Well, I read about it in the book of Revelation.
You read it too. I read about it in the book of Revelation. You read it too. Look away beyond the blue. Do Lord, oh do Lord, oh do remember me. Well, do Lord, oh do Lord, oh do remember me. Do Lord, oh do Lord, oh do remember me. Look away beyond the blue. Well, one glad morning when this life is over, well, I'll fly away to a home on God's celestial shore. I'll fly away. Well, I'll fly away, oh Lordy, I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away. Now will the circle be unbroken? By and by, Lord, by and by. There's a better home awaiting in the sky, Lord, in the sky. In the sky, Lord, in the sky.
Wow, I think we're about that close to a UU revival there. We're going to sing an old song that Pete Seeger used to sing all the time. He wants you to sing along with us. It's Michael Row the Boat Ashore. Sing it with us. Michael row the boat ashore. Hallelujah. Michael row the boat ashore. Hallelujah. Sister, help to trim the sails. Hallelujah. Sister, help to trim the sails. Hallelujah. Michael row the boat ashore. Hallelujah. Michael row the boat ashore. Hallelujah. The river of Jordan is chilly and cold. Hallelujah. Chills the body but not the soul. Hallelujah. Michael row the boat ashore. Hallelujah. Michael row the boat ashore. Hallelujah. The river of Jordan is deep and wide. Hallelujah. Milk and honey on the other side. Hallelujah. One more time. Michael row the boat ashore. Hallelujah. Michael row the boat ashore. Hallelujah. One more time and you all sing it. Michael. Beautiful. John, there's your choir members out there.
Yeah, I see him. I got my eye on him.
Good morning. As we come together today, know we are glad to have you here. Our arms and hearts are open to all who come with goodwill. I am Gypsy Richardson, your worship associate this morning. You've already seen some announcements on the screen, but I have a couple that I want to especially talk about. The social action team wants to remind us to sign up in the lobby to donate paper towels to the Haven. The Spiritual Explorers will resume on Thursday, September 15, and will meet weekly from 2 to 3:30. This group is open to anyone who would like to explore spiritual teachers such as Buddha, Jesus, Lao Tzu, as well as current issues and authors. Details are in the weekly newsletter. If people still wish to attend the UUTC retreat on 9 through 11 September, they should register by Monday to make sure they can choose the type of accommodations they want. And today we are very fortunate to have our Minister Emeritus, the Reverend Ernie Mills, in our pulpit this morning.
Song we learned from Peter, Paul, and Mary, Somos el Barco, and just sing with us on the chorus. We are the boat, we are the sea. I sail in you, you sail in me. The stream sings it to the river sings it to the sea. The sea sings it to the boat that carries you and me.
Somos el barco, somos el mar, y navega en ti, tú navegas en mí. We are the boat, we are the sea, I sail in you, you sail in me. The boat we are sailing on was built by many hands. The sea we are sailing on, it touches heavy lands. Somos el barco, somos el mar, yo navego en ti, tú navegas en mí. We are the boat, we are the sea, I sail in you, you sail in me. So with our hopes, we set the sails and face the winds once more. And with our hearts, we chart the waters never sailed before. Somos el barco, somos el mar, yo navego en ti, tú navegas en mí. We are the boat, we are the sea, I sail in you, you sail in me. sail in you, you sail in me.
He always has to have the last chord.
Are we moving on from
I think
here?
we're
What are we
moving
doing?
on, yeah.
What are we doing? Joys and sorrows, okay. Good morning, everyone. It's good to be here. It's great to be alive in Transylvania County. And I want to, before I begin, I want to thank Preacher Bob for sharing his pulpit with me again this morning, and also Vanessa for putting the service together, for Gypsy for helping me up here. John Dreyer was going to play the prelude and offertory for us this morning, but he and Joy both tested for this latest case of COVID, so he wasn't able to make it. And I want to thank Catherine and Doug for all the setup they do, and the ushers, the Burrs, and John and Jim. And I want to thank all of you for being here this morning, because you never know what you're going to get into when you come here. And so that's just the way it is. But so far it's good. I'm going to try to sing this song, one verse of it anyway. People who need people are the luckiest people in the world. That's as far as I'm going with that. Okay. Let me get my head in order here and remember what reading I'm doing. 468. And I chose this reading because, like the song said, we need each other. And I think sometimes we forget that we really do need each other. We want to go it alone because we're so invested in our egos, you know. And I know this is maybe not particularly true of everyone, but particularly true of us males sometimes. You know, we're strong, we can do it on our own. And we forget that how much we really do need each other. So I chose this reading before we do our joys and concerns, and you can read along with me because it's up there for you. If you would read the response part, the yellow part. We need one another when we mourn and would be comforted. We need one another when we are in despair, in temptation, and need to be recalled to our best selves again. We need one another in the hour of success when we look for someone to share our triumphs. We need one another when we come to die and would have gentle hands prepare us for the journey. Thank you. If you have a joy or a concern that you would like to share with us, there's a microphone right there. I think I'm going to turn it around this way. Is that all right? You're invited to come up and share that with us. And as always, I just want to remind you that try to avoid advertisements and commercials if you would. No, I'm serious because sometimes, come on up here.
We just got back from 2 wonderful weeks in Montana and Wyoming where we visited both of our sons and got most of the family together, and it was wonderful.
I'm trying to get this lit up.
It is such a joy to see Gloria Sanders here this morning.
I have a great joy for being in this church. My husband and I were recently very, very ill, and you took care of us, and we are back on our feet again. Thank you.
This is more bittersweet. It's not particularly one or the other. Most of you have known me since I was about 2 years old, and tomorrow is my first day of my last year of high school.
I was actually babysitting for her when she was 2 years old. I'm serious. I can hardly recognize Olivia. She was about, she loved to play out in her forest behind her house. She liked to play, I don't know, but I would give her a treat and her mother never would. She might remember that. My name is Carol Flake, and my joy today is that I've spent the last 2 years blending my family with this beautiful man that I've known for 40 years named Dan Clem. Today he's out kayaking on Lake Wantasca with his son, Tim, who's been spending a lot of time with us. And I was really worried about how that was going to go. And it has been really quite extraordinary. And his brother and sister-in-law have visited us 3 or 4 times, and his godchild and her 4-year-old, not to mention all of my family. So it feels like I've been running a 5-star free bed and breakfast. So that's a joy. The arthritis, not so much.
My name is Terry Ashley, and my joy was August the 12th when up at the mountain I had commissioned a piece of music for my 80th birthday. It was a bassoon and piano duet, and it went way beyond anything that I could have expected. It was the most joyful day in my life.
This last Wednesday, Alice and I celebrated our 59th wedding anniversary. Yes. She wanted me to tell you that we got married when we were 12. And she is a model of patience and perseverance.
Ask you to light a candle. This is both a joy and a sorrow. Candle for my brother Rob, who died on Thursday. The sorrow is his death. The joy is that a long, painful bout with cancer is over.
Spend a few moments just silently holding in our hearts and in our minds the concerns and the joys that were just shared with us. Okay.
As we move deeper into the service, the opening words are by Kenneth L. Patton. Let us worship with our eyes. Let us worship with our eyes and ears and fingertips. Let us. We feed our eyes upon the mystery and revelation in the faces of our brothers and sisters. We seek to understand the shyness behind arrogance, the fear behind pride, the tenderness behind clumsy strength, the anguish behind cruelty. Let us worship, not in bowing down, not with closed eyes and stopped ears. Life comes with singing and laughter, with tears and confiding, with a rising wave too great to be held in the mind and heart and body, to those who have fallen in love with life. And now I ask that you rise in body or spirit and sing our first hymn, number 21, For the Beauty of the Earth. The words will be on the screen.
For some reason, we forgot the chalice lighting. Oh, there it is.
Yeah, it's next. Yeah. Nope, we got it. The beauty of it. For the chalice, while lighting of the chalice, while Ernie lights the chalice.
Ernie chose words from Helen Keller. I have walked with people whose eyes are full of light, but who see nothing in sea or sky, nothing in city streets, nothing in books. It were far better to sail forever in the night of blindness with sense and feeling and mind than to be content with the mere act of seeing. The only lightless dark is the night of darkness in ignorance and insensibility.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Lausch, and I work with the children here. Would any kids want to come up right now? Well, I know we've got a couple also in the nursery, so after this, it's so much fun. I think I'm going to go be with them again. Well, in talking through email with Ernie, he told me about Helen Keller and some thoughts for the kids, so I wanted to talk a little bit about her. Most of you know her, but she was the woman who was born in Alabama in the 1880s, and after a serious illness before the age of 2, she went completely blind and deaf. And as you might know, at that time, so many people who had a disability might basically be warehoused somewhere and given up on. Some reason her family didn't. They also had the benefit of having a lot of money. And they hired a teacher named Anne Sullivan who came and helped her. And Anne Sullivan was a miracle worker, but so was Helen in her own life. And in it, one of the breakthroughs they said they found was when Anne was trying to teach her the concept of words, and words meant to a physical thing to help break through the prison that was the disability at the time. And so Anne was trying to teach her through what was called manual language, which is kind of the precursor, the thing that came before sign language, the idea for water. And she said, water, I'm going to see if I can get it right, is W-A-T-E-R. And she repeated that over and over and over in Anne's hand. But it wasn't ever quite working. So she kept going and kept going. Helen would get incredibly frustrated, throw tantrums. She had no way to voice her anguish, her loneliness, her frustration. But finally it started to break through when Anne kept doing it, but took Helen to a well where cool water came out, and she pumped it while she spelled. And she held her hand in the water and just kept saying W-A-T-E-R over and over until Helen came to know that this cool running sensation on her hand was water. And that was the beginning of learning a language and being able to access her outside world. And they said by the end of that day, Helen had learned about 30 words. Within a few months, she could start putting together simple sentences. And this woman went on to go to Radcliffe College because she demanded education, which was set up for women by Harvard because, of course, women weren't allowed to go with men. She went on to meet every president, I think, between Grover Cleveland and Lyndon B. Johnson. She traveled to 35 countries, wrote over 12 books, gave speeches. Most importantly, she saw the world through the eye of her mind, not her failed eyes or ears, and she was able to see herself and see the world as it could possibly be. And so that's the memory we need to have of her, is to seeing how things could possibly be, not the limitations. Because for her, she saw beyond it to the point where she said, children shouldn't work in factories, and she fought for children to have equal rights and to be in school and to not have child labor. She became a suffragette and fought for women to have the right to vote. She became an advocate for people with disabilities and fought for them to be treated fairly and helped usher in one of the first laws on disability. And she did so much more. So it's just a reminder that let's see with the eye of our mind of what we can possibly be and what everyone in the world can possibly be, and not just the limitations that we see right now. And I'm going to head to the nursery then, and have a great day.
Now is the time in the service when we ask for offerings. We are committed to a more just, loving, and compassionate world, and our offering is action that goes with that commitment. Your financial contributions to UUTC fund our mission, whether you drop them into a basket today or donate online. Our charitable giving recipient this month is El Centro.
One day a babe was born along the highway, a tiny helpless thing upon the sand, and an Okie with a dream out on the byway took the baby and held it proudly in his hand, and the woman smiled a gentle smile of knowing, and whispered something low under her breath, perhaps a little prayer to help the growing, perhaps a word of comfort from the field. You can trust the moon to move the mighty ocean. You can trust the sun to shine upon the land. You take the little that you know, and you do the best you can, and you save the rest for the quiet faith of woman and of man. The farmer makes his way along the fence line. The seeds are dropped precisely in the row. If the rain is kind and the wind don't take the topsoil, before too long the crops will start to show. Now the farmer sees the fields around him ripen, and whispers something low under his breath, perhaps a little prayer to help with the growing, perhaps a word of thanks for all the rest. You can trust the moon to move the mighty oceans. You can trust the sun to shine upon the land. Take the little that you know, and you do the best you can, and you save the rest for the quiet faith of woman and of man. There's a storm-tossed ship out on the ocean. There's a soul that sails alone out on the blue. There's a dreamer with his eyes upon the heavens. They're all looking for a way to make it through. You can trust the moon to move the mighty ocean. You can trust the sun to shine upon the land. You take the little that you know, and you do the best you can, and you save the rest for the quiet faith of woman and of man, and you save the rest for the quiet faith of woman and of man. If you could, would you just spend a few moments, just greet the people around you? You don't have to shake hands or anything, but just greet the people around you. Make sure that so I'm bringing it all out this way, right? So, make sure. You may notice that the hymns we're singing, this morning for the beauty of the earth, and our closing hymn is "Be Thou My Vision." You know, sometimes Paul Stuckey says the world doesn't go by too fast, we do. And you know, I think that's so true, because I know for myself that sometimes I get so preoccupied, I really miss the beauty that's around us here in this county. And so lately I've been just trying to be mindful of what I'm seeing and not miss it, because I think that can happen to us sometimes. Sometimes we live in such a beautiful place. And so I selected those hymns because I think they remind us, for the beauty of the earth, for the glory of the eye, and the reading as well is how we use our eyes and how we can, how our mind uses our eyes. I've been fascinated with Helen Keller for a long time, and I really enjoyed what Kevin said about her. It was very, I'm going to talk to him about going into the ministry after this is over. That was a really very moving, his words about Helen Keller. But I've always been fascinated with that moment when she woke up. And I've gone back, I dated it 2005 in this book, but I've go back periodically through time and just reread that to myself and just, you know, try to figure out what really happened with her. So I want to share that episode that he shared with the water over the hand of Helen. And from her point of view and what she wrote in her book about that experience. She says, she's talking about her teacher. She brought me my hat, and I knew I was going out into the warm sunshine. This thought, if a wordless sensation may be called a thought. And I thought that was a very interesting observation. If a wordless sensation can be called a thought, well, it really can't, because we think in words, we think with words. So instead of responding with words at that moment, she responded with what we typically respond with sometimes when we're excited. We hop and we skip. She says, that thought made me hop and skip with pleasure. So, you know, we express our emotions that way. Sometimes we move, emotions make us move. So she hopped and skipped because she didn't have the words to express that pleasure she was feeling in that moment. We walked down the path to the well house, attracted by the fragrance of the honeysuckle with which it was covered. Someone was drawing water, and my teacher placed my hand under the spout. As the cool stream gushed over my hand, she spelled into the other the word water, slowly, then rapidly. I stood still, my whole attention fixed upon the motion of her fingers. Suddenly, I felt a misty consciousness as of something forgotten, a thrill of returning thought, and somehow the mystery of language was revealed to me. I knew then that W-A-T-E-R meant that wonderful cool substance that was flowing over my hand. Now, here's the part that I find so fascinating. That living word awakened my soul. That living word awakened my soul, gave it light, hope, joy, set it free. There were barriers still, it is true, but barriers that in time could be swept away. I left the well house eager to learn. Everything has a name. Everything has a name, and each name gave birth to a new thought. As we returned to the house, every object which I touched seemed to quiver with life. Now listen to this last sentence. That was because I saw. Everything with this strange new sight that had come to me. So here's the way I see it. It's interesting that it was water because, we can't really hold water in our hands. It just kind of slips right by us. If you try to hold water, if you ever tried to hold it, you can't. But in that moment, what happened with Helen is the realization that I can hold it in my mind and I can think about it without having to have it pour over my hand, without having to touch this as Kevin described it, alone and isolated in this world that only you could touch, this sort of material world. That in that moment, if I don't know a whole lot about neuroscience, but I think a neuroscientist would say at that moment that energy from her hand just followed up her arm, and suddenly the light came on in her prefrontal cortex, right? In her mind. The light just came on in her mind suddenly. Most of us don't have that experience because we learn over time the meaning of words and language. But for her, it was just this sudden realization, and suddenly this light comes on. And there's a sense of, to me, the most remarkable part of the story is this a sense of soul, that I exist, that I can be conscious of myself. I am. And because I am, then you are. So I just recently discovered, maybe many of you have known this for a while, but I recently discovered from a book that Jim Hardy gave me called The Body Keeps Score. And by the way, it's #1 bestseller, New York Times for, Earl, 100 weeks? Probably now 101 weeks. But anyway, what I found was really, to me, very revealing and profound that we don't see with our eyes. We don't see with this right here. The function of this thing, right, these eyes, is merely to let light come in. And that little pupil, it opens up at night to let more light in and closes during the day to keep more light out. But that's all it functions to do. And that was really startling to me, that we don't see with our eyes. So that little, that light sets off an electrical charge that runs up what's called the optic nerve to the primary visual cortex. I sound like I know what I'm talking about, but I don't. But it's right back. It's back here. We see from behind here. This is where sight is. It's back here, and from there, the impulse, that electrical current, can go anywhere in the brain. And I'm going to talk about that in a moment, where if we're not careful, it'll go straight to the amygdala, and that's the place of fear. So we're really seeing through the eyes of fear. And there's a lot of that going on today, that people are really seeing, and we're seeing each other through the eyes of fear. So that current is not making it up to the higher functions of the brain, mind. I don't think you can really separate the two, to what's called the prefrontal cortex, and then on to there to the what's called the executive function, which I'll describe that a little bit more later, which I'll call the Christ consciousness or the Buddha consciousness. Executive function, that sounds like, to me, like the president or something, somebody sitting up on the Oval Office or something, executive function. I could think of it as it's just really mindfulness, Buddhist mindfulness, being very aware of your thoughts and how your mind is really controlling what you see. So really, that made me think of that reading Peter shared with us from Helen Keller, that there's really two ways of seeing. There's one that's what Helen says is the mere act of seeing, where people really don't see anything. They don't see what's in the sky, the sea. They don't see each other's faces. They don't see people on city. They see nothing in city streets. They see nothing in books. And she calls that the mere act of seeing. And to me, that would be the light is coming in, but you've heard the saying, the light's on, but nobody's home. The light's on, but nobody's home. There's not a mind there that's really thinking about what it's seeing. Do we have that, Doug, do we have that reading that Peter read? Do we have that? I think I wanted you guys to try to show that if you could. Here it is. And, you think about that coming from a woman who's blind and deaf. And I think it's so profound when you think about that, where that's coming from, that she could really actually see more than and better than many of us could see. And yet she was blind. Because obviously, as Kevin shared, she got an education. She learned how to hone and skill the mind so that it could see. And that the executive function, the Christ consciousness, the Buddha mindfulness, we're not born with that. We're born with all these other functions of the brain, but we're not born with it. That has to be trained. We have to be educated. That's a skill we have to learn to use our minds. 80% of reality comes through us through our eyes. Now, that's what I heard. You could argue with that, but you couldn't say that about Helen, that 80% of reality for her came through her eyes. Well, it didn't come through her eyes. It came through her mind. Anyway, did you take that reading down? Did you put it back up? Thank you, Doug. So I kept thinking about, okay, mere act of seeing. Okay, I'm gonna title my talk "The Art of Seeing," because just like any art, it's something like playing a musical instrument or any art form. You have to hone it and skill it. It's a skill. You can jump around, hop and skip, or you can dance, and that's learning a skill. So really, that seeing is we see two ways. We see with this eye, we see with the mind. And I was thinking about that, and it reminded me of Genesis and Eve. See, now Eve got us in all this trouble. Would you put that quote from Genesis story? Because I thought that story too is about seeing with two different sets of eyes. And it's mythical. And really it's a story about the birth of consciousness, where consciousness came from. And there are other, there's a Greek myth of Prometheus stealing fire from the gods, creating consciousness, creating the mind. But I thought, here's a good example of two ways of seeing. The woman saw the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise. She took of its fruit and ate it. And then she gave it to her husband, who was with her, and he ate. And then the eyes of both were open. So you have two experiences of sight there. You have the light entering, the mere act of seeing, and then you have this opening of the mind. And the first thing that happens when they eat the fruit is they see each other. And you can watch this happen in a child. I think that's probably where this came from. You observe it in little children. it's almost like they have the mere act of seeing, but they really don't see themselves and each other. Till they reach a certain age, they begin to see themselves. They begin to see that they're naked, perhaps. They become aware of their body, and they also become aware of the other, and that the other exists. So I thought, well, that's a kind of another example of what we're talking about here, the two ways of seeing. You can take that down now, unless anybody wants to. Of course, that story, and I won't get into that, I'll save that for another time. That story really is blames women for the problems of the world. And it's a matriarchal story that's trying to disempower the matriarchal society. So the woman's blamed. Of course, she passes the buck to Adam, gets blamed. He passes the buck to Eve, and Eve says, well, the snake made me do it. Anyway, we'll save that for another time. So seeing is an act of the mind. And that made me also think of something Jesus once said, they have eyes, but they don't see. They have eyes, but they don't see. In other words, they're not really thinking about what they're seeing, or their minds are under the control of something else that's forcing them to see something. So I would add to the mere act of seeing nothing in sea or sky, to seeing nothing beyond what happens often to us, to humans, the distractions of the world, not being able to see beyond our fears or our hatred, not being able to see beyond our envy, our greed, and all of these things, I think, become obstacles that prevent us from really seeing each other for who we are, and also just seeing the beauty around us. I mean, when is the last time you saw a flower? Can you remember it? When is the last time you watched the clouds in the sky? When was the last time you looked up and saw the stars at night? Or were you, like me, so busy you don't have time for that? You know, when was the last time you sat by a stream or a river and just watched the water flow by? So we get distracted. And to me, that mere act of seeing in itself is a form of blindness, that we're blind. We're not seeing. I was reading about sharks the other day. And, when a shark is fed and it's satiated, it doesn't see other fish. It doesn't see the sardine can be right in front of it, and it just doesn't see it. But if the stimulus threshold, it's very high at that point. But once that stimulus threshold is lowered and the shark is hungry, well, it sees the sardine, and because it's hungry, and of course it eats it. But if you look at the brain of a shark, here I go again on brain stuff, but the shark's eyes are connected directly to its hypothalamus, and its hypothalamus sends that energy straight to the reflex muscles. And that happens so quick that it's a split second that happens. And I think to myself, well, that can happen to us too. That we can be stimulated such that we are hungry all the time. And I think the commercial industry is just very good at doing that. Keeping our appetites, keeping our threshold level so low that we're always hungry. Even when we're not hungry, we're hungry. And I don't mean just hungry for food. I mean hungry for other things, and you know what I'm talking about, I'm sure. And the commercial industry has a great way of doing it. We call that subliminal, which is below the threshold of consciousness, where the mind's not operating, where what's happening is we're seeing, and that seeing is sending that impulse straight to the hypothalamus and straight to the reflex a reflex. You know what a reflex is? That's a reflex. That's a reflex. Just hit and reflect. Reflection is where you create a little gap between those two. And in that gap, you think. You think in that gap. So it's not a reflex. But if you look around, you see that many times we are in that shark mode. And we are just being sharks. Now I'm going to talk about Joseph Campbell. Okay. Then Carl Jung, right. Is that clock right? Lord have mercy, I got to hurry up. Somebody might have a ham in the oven. Joseph Campbell talks about the supernormal sign stimulus. Now get that, supernormal sign stimulus. And he uses an example of a grayling butterfly. And he said the grayling butterfly, when it's time to mate, will pursue the darker female butterflies and not the lighter female butterflies. But if you make a model that's not real, you made out of plastic, and you make it even darker than the real thing, guess what happens? The butterfly flies after the plastic model. And he calls that a supernormal sign stimulus. Well, our commercial industry is full of supernormal sign stimuli. How do you sell a mattress? Well, you put a model on it. You know what kind of model I'm talking about. Well, now it could be Brad Pitt now. How do you sell a car? How do you sell a house? How do you sell anything in this? I'm going to sound real like a Bolshevik. I know it. But our capitalistic system is wiping out our minds, in my opinion. And what has really, I know it's a strong word to say, disgusting, but every time I hear the word consumer, I'm disgusted by it. You are not a consumer. You're a human being. You have a heart and you have a mind. And if we are nothing but consumers, we don't need a mind. All we need is a digestive tract. We need an esophagus. We need a place where it goes in and a place where it comes out. That's all we need if we're consumers. I'm going to say it 3 times because it's Trinitarian. You're not a consumer. You're not a consumer. You're not a consumer. You're a human being. You have a heart. You have a mind. One more example, and no, I'm going to skip that example. No, I'm not going to skip it because it's important. Has anybody ever heard of the Pilgrim Scallop? The Pilgrim Scallop lives in the depths of the ocean, and it has like 24 eyes, but it doesn't see out of them. 24 eyes around the Pilgrim Scallop. And those eyes don't connect to a brain. They connect directly to the motor apparatus. And there's one thing that makes that scallop move is when it sees something to eat and when it sees its prey, the starfish hysteria. And when it sees the starfish, it doesn't see the color of the starfish. It sees the dark movement. Not too fast, not too slow, but the dark movement of the starfish. And then those little eyes, they send out little tentacles like little eyelashes, and it swims away, and it gets away or it gets eaten. That's the Pilgrim Scallop. And they say of the Pilgrim Scallop, it doesn't use its eyes use the scallop. So, I think, are we scallops? Do our eyes tell us what we're going to see before we even see it? Okay, so 2 men see another human being running through a neighborhood. Not jogging, but running. And their minds tell them that they're seeing a black man running, probably from the scene of a crime, because he's black and he's running in a white neighborhood. So they want to be heroes, so they go get their guns, they pursue him, and they murder him. Their eyes have told them what they're going to see before they even see it. And we call that prejudice and racism. And we do it in other ways too. We do it sometimes with homeless people. We do it with people. We prejudge them. In other words, before our eyes ever see them, our minds have already told us what we're going to see. Seeing is not a mere act. It's an art. Jesus once said, the eye is the lamp of the body. If your eye is whole, your body will be full of light. If your eye is not whole, your body will be full of darkness. And then he asked the question, how great is the darkness? And I thought that was pretty profound. I mean, whether he said it or not doesn't matter. It was said. People said, the Bible says don't judge. It's wrong to judge. That's not what it says. Again, in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says, you see the speck in your neighbor's eye, but you don't see the log in your own. And that log in your eye is what obstructs the light from coming in. And if you could just move that log of hatred or that log of fear or that log of greed or envy, you could see the whole. You could see that we're all one. You could see the beauty all around you. Jesus says, all right, first of all, before you pass your condemnation and your judgment on another human being, whoever they are, look at the log in your own eye and then make your judgment. I think what he intends to say, if you really look at the log in your own eye, you probably won't make any judgments at all. Or if you look at the log in your own eye, your judgment will be made with much compassion. Okay, I'm sorry I've kept you over time. Seeing is an art. We learn to think, we learn to see, we learn to reflect. That Christ consciousness, that executive function is, here's how the neuroscience define it. It is the ability to think about something more than one way. The Christ consciousness, the Buddha mindfulness, is the inhibitory control, self-control. It helps us to avoid impulsive actions and behaviors, and it abstracts the morals from the culture. It's not been long since we human species have developed this executive function. And I think, the great Shema in the Old Testament is love God with your heart, your soul, and your might. But Jesus adds to that, love God with your heart, your soul, your might, and your mind. He added that mind because my theory is that just at that moment in the evolution of our human species, the sense that executive function, that Christ consciousness, that Buddha mindfulness was coming to the fore. So anyway, thank you for listening. Seeing is an art. Seeing is an art. Thank you. Amen. Who said that? Well, you say amen to a preacher, it's like saying sick 'em to a dog. So I've got another sermon here I was going to do. Okay, I hope nobody had a ham in the oven. 682. Number 20, Be Thou My Vision. Thank you, John. Let's stand and sing that together. Thou my best thought. John and James, do y'all know a song from Oklahoma called What a Beautiful Morning? Do y'all happen to know that? Could y'all come up and sing that for us? You do know it, right? We'll need everybody to join in. Okay. Golden haze on the meadows. There's a bright golden haze on the meadow. The horn is as high as an elephant's high, and it looks like it's climbing up to the sky. The sounds of the earth are like music. The sounds of the earth are like music. The sounds of the earth are like music. The breeze is as busy, it don't miss a tree. And the weeping willow is laughing at me. Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. I got a wonderful feeling. Everything's going my way. Now the challenge is to sing it like this. Nothing is going my way, and it's still a beautiful day.
I have to tell you, you said, let's make it fun, and you sure did. That was
Thank you, Gypsy.
wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you, Gypsy. Excuse me?
Sorry.
Let me take temptation away.